Good morning, good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to this third webinar of UNECE webinar series on urban resilience and SDG localization. This is the third webinar, and it will be on topic of formalization of informal settlements and informal constructions in the UNECE region. My name is Yana Antonenko, and I will be co-hosting the session today together with some of my colleagues, Paula, Mia, Maximilian, and our experts, Cristi Poțiu and Anna Badina. So before we proceed with this, I would like to remind you a few rules for today's session. So please keep your microphone muted during the session. You can place your questions in the Q&A section in the Zoom panel if you have any, or in the chat also, and we will take these questions later at the end of the webinar. There will be a special time for this. And I would like to remind you that there is a live interpretation into Russian available during this session. So if you would like to use that option, you have to go to the lower Zoom panel as well and click on the globe icon, and you will be able to choose the language that you would like to use, and it works vice versa, so English to Russian and Russian to English if needed. And now I'm pleased to give floor to Ms. Paula Deda, who will give you a welcome and explain you a little bit more about today's sessions and UNECE work in this area in the region. So Paula, whenever you want, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yana, for this introduction, and good morning, everybody. Well, it is really my pleasure to welcome you today to the third webinar of this series on urban resilience and SDG localization, in which we are presenting different e-learning courses which are available at UNECE. In today's webinar, we will introduce you to two learning courses on the topic of formalization of informal settlements in the UNECE region. These e-learning courses are self-paced, free, and available both in English and Russian. Let me also give you some contextual background on UNECE work in this area. Our division is actively involved in several initiatives with national and local governments, and our focus is on affordable, adequate, climate-neutral housing, compact, inclusive, circular, resilient, and smart and sustainable cities, and transparent and efficient land use and property registration. As you can see from this slide, we have several tools and publications that can help cities start formalization processes for informal settlements. Let me just list three of them. Self-Made Cities, a publication from 2009, which examines the main characteristics of the phenomenon of informal settlements. We have the Guidelines for Formalization of Informal Constructions, which was published in 2019, and is a brief, practical, and easy-to-read guide explaining how to structure a program for the formalization of informal construction. And last but not least, we have COVID-19 Recovery Action Plan for Informal Settlements in the UNECE region, which was published in 2022 and targets national and local governments in the UNECE region, providing an extensive list of goals, targets, and actions. It is also designed to help build back better, achieving greater resilience against future pandemic risks and helping achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, with a particular focus, of course, on SDG 11 on sustainable cities and human settlements. We are actually very, very pleased to have today with us in this webinar experts who contributed to these publications and the development of e-learning courses, Dr. Anna Badina and Dr. Cristi Poțiu. They will give an overview of the course contents, and explain why formalization of informal construction is important, and of course the main steps necessary to initiate a formalization process. To conclude, I would like to thank our experts, our partners at the University of Geneva, which is hosting online training platforms, Ms. Mia Ali Begovic and Ms. Yana Antonenko, who are, of course, the organizers of these webinars, and Mr. Maximilian Otto Andres for his assistance. Thank you very much, and have a good training.
Thank you very much, Paula, for this introduction. And now let me briefly introduce you to the agenda of today's session. So we already started with a little bit of introduction to the webinar series, and we are going to look at the e-learning courses that we have available on this topic of informal settlements and the city resilience training platform where these courses are hosted. And this will be also coupled with the short quiz. And after that, we will have a presentation by Dr. Anna Badina on key findings of Self-Made Cities publication, followed by a presentation by Dr. Christy Patsiou on general topic of informal settlements in the UNECE region, and also overview of the both courses and the contents of these courses. And lastly, we will have some time for questions and answers and information about the next webinar. Just to give you also a little bit of general information, you might already know this because when you register, you probably have seen this information. So today we have webinar 3 in this series, and this webinar is introducing these 2 courses on formalization of informal constructions and implementing COVID-19 recovery plans for informal settlements. And there will be next webinar number 4 will be also dedicated to this topic. And we have already had 2 webinars so far on the course on urban economic resilience. And if you have missed those webinars, they are all going to be, they're already available on the website where you registered. There's a link, and we're also going to put additional link in the chat so you can find those. So in total, there are 6 webinars, and they're free of charge, of course, and available both in English and Russian. And the timeline, so we started them in October 2023, and we plan to run them until end of March 2024. We would like to have a short Zoom poll. So my colleague Maximilian has already launched this Zoom poll. You can answer 3 simple questions if you can. And this way we can get to know a little bit more how familiar you are with this topic of informal settlements, and how also if you have attended the previous webinars or not. So we can give it a few minutes for you to answer these 3 questions, and also we will check your answers later. We will share them. You can answer directly in the Zoom just by clicking the answer you think is appropriate. I think we have 60% of respondents have answered, so we can share the results. As you can see, so most of you have not attended the previous webinar. So like I mentioned, if you're interested in previous webinars and e-learning courses, you can check recordings that are available on our webpage, and the link to it is in the chat. And just to mention that these recordings are available in both languages, English and Russian. And second question was about how many people are estimated to live in informal settlements in the UNECE region according to your knowledge. So here we have half, almost for 50 million and 2 million. The correct answer is, according to UNECE estimates, it is 50 million in the UNECE region. So it's a really big issue for the region. And that's why we also hope that our knowledge that we're sharing is going to be useful for you in this question of formalization of informal settlements and why it is important and what is the process for it. And lastly, most of you know about the existence of informal settlements. Thank you for answering these questions. Now I'm going to briefly explain you about the platform or where the e-learning courses are hosted. So it's called cityresiliencetraining.com. And all the courses here are online. They're self-paced and they are free of charge, so you can access them anytime. And we are launching more courses as we go. So currently we have some courses available on urban economic resilience, on informal settlements, VLRs, voluntary local reviews. So we invite you to check out these courses, and especially the courses that we are going to talk about today. And so this is a quick video with the interface of the platform. So you can see that it's available in English and Russian languages, and you can filter by course categories. And when you choose a course, you need to enroll into it. And for that, you will be asked to register in the website. And after that, you'll have all the access to the course contents, including different, apart from interactive lectures, we have tests and additional reading materials and all kind of interactive features to help you explore the materials in a more interactive way. And also we have some certificates available at the end of the course. So when you finish the course, you can download your certificate. Also, so the courses on informal settlements are these 4. So basically it's the 2 in English and 2 in Russian. One of them, the first one is guidelines for formalization of informal constructions. This is the starting course. If you're not familiar with the topic, we recommend you to start with this course. Afterwards, there is implementing COVID-19 recovery action plans for informal settlements. And it is not only about COVID, but also how to, in general, build back better and move on with the recovering from the pandemic and the problems that it brought to informal settlements on top of those problems that they already had before. And so these our courses are translated into Russian, and they are identical. So you can check the language that you prefer to use. And let me briefly explain you about the first course that I mentioned. So guidelines for formalization of informal constructions. It is based on the publication that Paula has mentioned before, and it offers this practical guide that I will explain you how to structure a program for formalization of informal constructions, which is obviously very important for meeting the 2030 agenda and the sustainable development goals. So the focus is on the formalization process itself in this course. And like I mentioned, This is the first course, the basic course, if you're not familiar with the topic. And it is about 10 hours of self-paced learning. And another course is, like I mentioned also before, is COVID-19 Recovery Action Plan for Informal Settlements and how to implement this plan. And this course provides more in-depth understanding of this topic and will help you to learn how to build back better after the pandemic and how to be more, how to build resilience against possible future pandemic risks, and also by formalizing also the informal settlements and simultaneously helping to achieve the 2030 agenda and focusing on SDG 11 in particular. So the SDG 11 on sustainable cities and human settlements. We can proceed to our first speaker, Dr. Anna Badina, who will present you some key findings of the publication Self-Made Cities, which explains more about the characteristics and types of informal settlements and also the general context of how the informal settlements appeared and what are the different types and characteristics of them. So I'm very pleased to give floor to Anna. Please, whenever you want, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana. I'll be talking about, a study which was conducted by the UNECE Secretariat in 2009 on informal settlements in the region. The study has been developed into a book called Self-Made Cities, and it is necessitated by key international and UNECE regional sub-regional documents, including the New Urban Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals, particularly Sustainable Development Goals 11. The study recognizes informal settlement phenomena as a rather messy phenomena, which is quite difficult to capture in binary terms. And instead, it suggests a more helpful way of understanding of the phenomenon in terms of a spectrum of formality and formality, which I will demonstrate later in my presentations. So it discusses the complexity of informal settlements in the UNECE region, defining different types and characteristics, as well as many contributing factors. Also points to the centrality of key three systems, housing, land management, and planning system, and constraints within those systems which lead to the formation of informal settlements, but also are key for improving informal settlements. The study also integrates good practice examples and also lessons learned from those practices, and also concludes by suggesting policy recommendations and guidelines. The analysis of informal settlements in the sea region covers the history of the informal settlement formation, which actually dates back to 1950s and 1960s in some countries, so it's not a new phenomenon. But for some countries, it started quite recent in 1990s, for example, in Albania on large scale. It also engages with some, conceptual confusion or limitation, which are often noticed when you bring the topic of informal settlements into discussion with the UNECE countries, because it usually evokes images, quite often evokes images of slums, poverty, or self-made housing, which you often find in the context of Global South. Although these kind of extreme type of informality do exist in the UNECE regions, there are other more widespread forms and characteristics of informality beyond slums. The study offers a working definition of informal settlement, which is living conditions and their spatial manifestation that does not confirm formal rules, standards, and institutions. It defines key characteristics, including location, size, degree of illegality, demographics, as well as spatial organizations, and identifying contributing factors, dynamics that contributes to informal settlement formation at different levels, including socioeconomic changes, urbanization and migration, crisis of displaced people and refugees, also unrealistic regulations and lack of affordable housing. It comes up with three major key types, including squatter settlement, settlements for vulnerable groups, also upgraded squatter settlements, illegal subdivisions, and finally substandard inner city housing. Here's the formal informal continuum, which I talked about earlier. It is quite difficult to define whether an urban or housing development, formal or informal, especially if you look from the perspective of not one person or one group of people, because what sometimes formal on the paper can well contradict the reality and formality we had informality. So that's why the study suggests a more useful understanding of informality by applying like a continuum perspective. And here are some extracts from the study demonstrating formal informal continuum in relation to particular type of informal settlements, for example, upgraded squatter settlements. Formally, they are illegal land occupations, the housing without proper documentations, and those settlements are usually not well integrated into broader urban systems. But in reality, they provide quite good accommodation for the household living there, and how the household value this accommodation in terms of sites, in terms of opportunities, offers, for example, job opportunities because it's close near big cities. Then we have another type of informal settlements like substandard housing, which is found in cities. On the paper, they're formal housing, but in reality, they do not meet minimum living standards. And then we have extreme cases like squatter settlements in the form of slums, barracks, favelas, which are not only illegal on paper, but also do not provide proper accommodation. This accommodation quite precarious and do not offer any security. It really depends, how you view formality or informality. It really depends how you sense the situation and what you prepare to accept or recognize in this situation. Your knowledge, your circumstances, and your willingness to approach the situation more critically, but also more deeply. And that's why thinking of informal settlements in terms of continuum can help engage with the situation more critically, which is not only essential for designing better solutions, but also for recognizing and addressing gaps in the existing systems, but also finding opportunities for improvement. The study have identified 5 pathways to dealing with informal settlements. They are formalization and legalization, which is basically about providing security of tenure, land titling. Then regularization and upgrading. This intervention goes a little bit further than land or real estate registration by providing some infrastructure, and it is understood as an intervention at 3 different levels: the local, the neighborhood levels, identifying immediate problems and solutions; the city level, integration of the settlement into the city boundaries, including internet infrastructure, systems, and at the city region, integration within the urban agglomeration. The third type of intervention is resettlement and relocation, which is quite limited options and usually requires a strong tradition of public or municipal housing, and also significant presence of the state in land and housing market. Another type, alternative housing system, this kind of minimal state approach when you create enabling conditions involving communities and mobilizing their resources for housing construction by providing alternative housing systems, finance systems like soft loan, micro loans. And finally, it's urban renewal and regeneration in cities, here addressing informality in terms of overcrowding, substandard living, and social exclusion. The study also offers critical evaluation of the existing policy interventions by scrutinizing case studies of interventions. For example, these are one of the examples of how it appears in the study. For example, formalization and legalization approach, which is widespread in Albania, for example. A critical assessment points to that this approach is, while it is rather instrumental for raising public revenue, it is often fully integrated with social and infrastructure programs, and it is a rather market-focused approach which revolves around ownership title. Some problems. Of course, these interventions mentioned in the studies are technical and financial because it is quite a lengthy and costly procedure of land subdivision and registration, but also quite expensive for the households living in informal settlements in terms of affordability of registration fees as well as future taxes and service fees. And it also requires political administrative capacities because you need to be able to identify households who are entitled to legalization, but also you need to be able to deal with various sorts of land conflicts. Also, this approach leads often to commodification of tenure process, when you acquire title and you sell and you leave, and this leads to social exclusion as well. Some lessons learned from this intervention is that legalization must go together with preventive measures in terms of capacity building for urban and housing development, also identifying problems within regulatory systems. It should be part of integrated and comprehensive approach and lead to efforts to inadequate and affordable housing. And securing tenure must be an incremental approach. Of course, over the years of practicing these interventions, lessons have been learned and responses have been improved. For example, in La Praca informal settlement in Tirana in Albania, legalization now is supplemented with major infrastructure investment, and as you can see from this picture, a major road infrastructure investment. And finally, study also offers policy recommendations and principles. There are 11 overall, and I'm going to read them. So interventions, they are not one-size-fits-all solution. They must be comprehensive and context-specific. Informal settlements should be understood as a spatial manifestation of social inequality, which is complex and multidimensional and hence requires a range of social measures. There is a need for integrated national strategy to address social spatial inequality, along with measures of addressing informal settlements. Inclusive governance approaches are a must. Approach to dealing with informal settlements must be integrated, people-focused and place-based, and must integrate a good and proper analysis of deprivation. The three major systems, such as housing, land, and spatial planning, they must be at the center of informal settlement solutions, but also because they're part of the solution, but they also be part of poverty reduction strategies and economic development in general. A national housing strategy to support marginalized communities is a must. Also, a well-designed land management system which ensures affordable access to serviced land is essential. Proper spatial planning based on sustainable development principle is a must. Also, intervention must consider the development of social capital. And finally, knowledge and education and access to information must be widely provided. And I stop here, and I hope this introduction to the study is useful. And if you have any question, please do ask. Thank you, Yana.
Thank you very much, Anna, for your presentation. If you have any questions, and we will take them at the end. I saw there was one question about whether the presentation will be shared afterwards. And yes, so we will publish this entire recording of the entire webinar, both in English and Russian, on the project webpage through which you registered. And also we will publish the Russian version of speakers' presentations in the event webpage as well. So you can find, we will also place the links to the project website in the chat as we go along this webinar. And now I'm pleased to give the floor to our next speaker, Dr. Chrissy Patsiu, who will explain you more about the two e-learning courses and their contents that we are looking at today. So the guidelines for formalization of informal constructions and COVID-19 recovery action plan for informal settlements. And there is a lot of information in these two courses. So Chrissy will give an overview, and you can find always more information in the courses directly. So Chrissy, I'm pleased to give the floor to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yana. Okay, good morning, everybody. And this is Chrissy Patsiu. I'm a professor at the National Technical University of Athens, teaching cadastre and land management. And I'm going to give you a brief description about the e-learning courses, the two e-learning courses relevant to the informal settlements, the guidelines for formalization of informal constructions, and how to implement COVID-19 recovery action plans for informal settlements. And these two e-learning courses are referred to the two publications that we have mentioned earlier. Just a brief introduction. We have started research since 2007 in the field of informal settlements within UNECE. Much of that, it is in cooperation with FIG, the International Federation of Surveyors. And the first years we have been working on how to formalize and how to identify the situation and what we can formalize to identify the pre-existing challenges. Then we produced the publication in 2009, the Self-Made Cities, as you have heard earlier. And then we started an in-depth research for to identify the challenges in individual countries, which ended up into another publication, Formalizing the Informal, where you can have examples from the ongoing projects. And then by 2019, as you have heard earlier, we have managed to finish with some guidelines for formalization. When we want to formalize, what actually we have to do. And since we have managed to reach these states, COVID-19 just came along, and already we have been talking on how we will think about building back better, but with COVID-19 we realized that this is also a very urgent situation, how to build back better. And of course we understand that the pandemic was not localized, but unfortunately the biggest impact was within informal settlements, where the situations there are worse, both for living conditions and for working conditions. And unfortunately, we had a big impact, global impact, on humanity. We lost a lot of people, and we have much more impact on the economy, which delayed also the implementation of the global sustainable development agenda of the UN. So by 2022, we were ready with summarizing the experience and the legacy from COVID-19, and we have prepared the recovery action plans. So these two publications, the guidelines and the COVID-19 recovery action plans, are interrelated with each other, and the training courses, of course, are interrelated. Here you can see the general setup, what we are talking about. We have the guidelines on one side, and of course we consider informal constructions as unauthorized constructions that are not registered, not bankable, not marketable. And of course, people that do not have security of tenure, anytime they can be thrown away. So what we try to do is to give guidelines for formalization, first to give legal empowerment to the people, to address the Sustainable Development Agenda 2030, the first goal, get rid of extreme poverty, and to provide the geospatial infrastructure, and to provide also access to credit for people, and also to have suggestions for building back better to address the Sustainable Development Goal 11 for sustainable cities and settlements. And then on the other side, we have the Recovery Action Plan, Building Back Better, that focuses on improving resilience against pandemics, but also on how to build back better in a fit-for-purpose way. And then you're supposed to read these two publications and to develop your own local recovery action plan for building back better for each specific region. So this local action plan is going to be considered as a sort of a building back better plan. And because we are always talking about building back better, let me give you a brief description of the history of building back better. What is it? It is considered to be a strategy aimed at reducing the risk to the people of nations and communities in the wake of future disasters and shocks. It was first introduced by the US President Bill Clinton in 2005 following a tsunami as a post-disaster recovery. And as such, a pandemic like COVID-19 is considered to be a disaster, and it may occur again anytime in future. I hope not very frequently, but we have to be ready because we understood that with COVID-19, the whole world was not ready, and how well we are prepared, this is what matters. So let me give you now the brief information how is the structure for formalization of informal constructions publication and of the e-course. We have video lectures that are unlocked in sequence, and once you pass a test, you listen to the first lecture, then you pass the test, then the next lecture is unlocked. Also, we have mandatory and supplementary readings that you have to do in sequence. Now, the general structure of the publication has these colorful main chapters: the preparation of the strategy, the preparation of the framework for formalization, and actually the formalization of the constructions, and then some parallel actions for building back better. So the e-course has a description about formalization and why. Briefly, we explain why we should be inclusive, why we should plan for affordable and reliable formalization process, and a process that has to give results in a timely manner, because we have to meet several SDGs by 2030. And as I said, mainly SDG 1 and SDG 11. and how to plan for a process that should have economic, environmental, and social benefits for everyone. We must be inclusive, but also to have the benefits for everyone, not only those who live in informal settlements, but also the others will benefit from the formalization. This is important to understand, that we should not have opponents in this effort. Then we have the readings of all the relevant publications. And then we have lecture 1, which is the introduction, gives you the background information that is related to the chapters 1 to 3 of the publication. And then we come with the preparation of the strategy, which is a very important chapter. And we have 2 lectures on that. First part is how to make an analysis of the existing informality and of how land markets work in this area, and to identify what can be formalized and what cannot be formalized, and how we will deal with those that cannot be formalized, and how we will deal with those that can be formalized. And then we have lecture 3, which is the second part of the strategy. And here we give you information how to make a cost-benefit analysis that justifies the urgent need for a fit-for-purpose formalization, inclusive, affordable, timely, etc., reliable, etc. And we give you some examples from Albania and Greece on how you estimate the impact of delaying the formalization each year. So actually we estimate the impact on GDP of each country, and this is interesting to see, and also to understand that threads are all interconnected within the society and the economy. And so this will help you to make a communication plan and to help you the strategy report. The strategy report goes to the government and the parliament so that you will get the acceptance for formalization. And the communication plan is addressing the whole society. And there you have to be very concrete, very open, and to describe the anticipated benefits for all. And then we have the other phase, the preparation of the framework for formalization, which refers to chapters 5 and 6. And here we have lecture 4, which has 2 modules. Module A, which explains how to define and address the areas and the categories, and how to define the zones for formalization, and what the categories of the eligible constructions for formalization, how to classify the types of constructions, and how to address the legal and technical informalities. Of course, we emphasize that we have to prioritize affordable and clear title provision for each property unit to take the benefits from that. And we emphasize why this is not just an economic issue, but mainly it is a social issue. And how to plan for a planning amnesty, and how to provide the right incentives for people to join and declare their informal constructions, not just to plan for giving incentives, but the right incentives for that. And then we have the module B of lecture 4, where we explain how to determine the legal and regulatory issues according to SDGs and the voluntary guidelines for responsible governance of tenure of FAO publication in an inclusive and affordable manner, and how to be flexible, in everything, in procedures, in penalties, and deadlines, even in deadlines and all that, because we want to be inclusive. We want to get everybody on board, and how to define the appropriate actions and simplify data collection and procedures, how to integrate modern technology in data collection, for example, how to have crowdsourcing methodology also to involve volunteers if needed, how to introduce mediation procedures to speed up the dispute resolution and title provision to avoid any court cases and all that, And for all that, we need to cooperate with local experts. It is a must, but also maybe international experts if necessary. And how to define the procedures for each class and type, etc. How to design the registration and how to establish the platform and all the technical facilities that they will support the formalization. How to determine the involved institutions. How to implement the administration system and how to monitor the progress. This is also a very important thing. Then we have lecture 5 there, which is that it does not refer actually to any chapter, but it is very important for you to understand why do we need the geospatial data and why do we need the key registers? Why do we need the geospatial official data? Why do we need the open data? Why do we need to blend the data and to integrate the data and to have at the end reliable data and do our job, what we want to do. And then we come with the last part here, the actions parallel and following formalization, where we have lecture 6 and lecture 7. Lecture 6 gives you information of what is needed to improve the whole ecosystem. For example, the planning system to have it pro-growth, pro-poor, the permitting system, also construction permitting system, the land administration services to be efficient and timely, and the creation of formal real estate markets, which is very important. To remove informality from real estate markets, to protect environmental sensitive areas, which is also very important, to introduce the monitoring process, to improve the professional ethics, again, very important issue, how to provide the incentives for improvements and for building back better, etc. And then we have actions taken after formalization or in parallel again, which refers to chapter 8. And we have lecture 7 here, how to develop affordable housing policy, how to provide property and fair taxation and consistent taxation, how to develop the banking sector for funding and to support all the projects for building back better and for the improvements of the settlements. And then we have lecture 8 with some conclusions. And now let me give you information about the structure or the whole structure again. We have the guidelines, we have the recovery action plan, which now I will explain to you. The recovery action plan is based on a whole bunch of policy briefs. So it is in line with international trends, policy brief for food, for example, for nature-based solutions, for public-private partnerships and innovative financing, for water and sanitation, for energy and building standards, for urban mobility. So the recovery action plan is in line with all that. We have also available some city assessment reports as an example, and we have all the online courses and the reference material that you can use, and then you are supposed to make your own local recovery action plan, which is here in the middle of this slide. And the structure of the post-COVID-19 Recovery Action Plan publication, actually, it is here described. The Recovery Action Plan publication has 9 policy areas, and each has a main goal. Each policy area has a main goal. Under this main goal, what we want to achieve there are targets, several targets. And for each target has actions that we need to undertake in order to achieve each target. And once we are ready with that and we have achieved each target, then we may achieve the goal that we want to achieve. So now we have the 9 policy areas here. Policy area 1, which speaks about the geospatial infrastructure, the land rights that we must provide, the security of tenure, social allocation, and the resource allocation and justice, which actually is the whole formalization concept. So we must be inclusive, we must be flexible, we must be open for that, because we believe that the more we formalize, the better for the society. To achieve goal 1 and goal 11 of the Sustainable Development Agenda. Then we have policy area 2, about the involvement of local communities and the local action. Because as you understand, all these projects are participatory projects, and it is important to have the community, the local community involved. And this is very important issue there, the policy area 2. I will come again into that. Then we have policy area 3, how to provide the basic data needs and how to improve the telecommunication and information technology in informal settlements for increasing resilience and for building back better. Then policy area 4, how to provide improvements in physical infrastructure, water, sanitation, and energy services. Then policy area 5, how to provide social and infrastructure services. And policy area 6, information about the stay-at-home recommendations and all these cultural issues and how to care about the vulnerable groups and have them engaged. This gives you information about improving resilience for the pandemics, for future pandemics also, gives you all the experience from COVID. Policy area 7, how to provide food and basic consumption and distribution in case of emergency. Policy area 8, how to address all the environmental concerns with the experience that we have from COVID-19, how to make it more safe, how to eliminate the virus spreads, how to plan for green spaces and recreation and social events. And then again, all the experience from COVID is also mentioned here in policy area 9, because all this in the post-COVID situation, the way our approach for construction and for planning has been influenced. So we have to care more about situations like what we have experienced when we plan our buildings, when we construct our buildings, when we plan our neighborhoods and our cities. So also we have tried to give you some information on how all these goals and targets and actions may be implemented and how much time we need to according to what we think, in order to finish with the fit-for-purpose approach, of course. Because if we want to be detailed and if we want to be excellent, then it may take ages. So we are talking about a fit-for-purpose approach. Reliable, affordable, timely, and inclusive. And here we have marked with different colors the goals and the targets and the actions. So we see that in red we have emergency goals that in order to be accomplished maybe need less than 6 months. We must be fast. We must be fast to that. Then we have the yellow that is defined as those to be accomplished in less than 1 year. And then we have the green color, which is blended resilience and emergency focus, and it may take 6 to 18 months to be accomplished. And then we have the long-term, as we said, long-term goals, but this maybe need often 1 to 5 years. So you see here that we don't give a very big time, a long time for accomplishment, because we believe that it is doable if we want to be open-minded and flexible. And then it is because we have a purpose, and the purpose is to meet the UN Sustainable Development Agenda by 2030. So this is our purpose, and this is what we try to do. And here you will see the lectures for the structure of the e-course on implementing COVID-19 Recovery Action Plan for Informal Settlements. Of course, again, we have the description, the introduction, then we have a lecture on Recovery Action Plan structure and objectives, and then we have a lecture on the terminology, clarifications, then we have the reading materials. And then it comes all the lectures according to the policy areas. We have the lecture on land rights tenure, policy area 1, as I mentioned, tenure, resource allocation, and justice. And we mentioned there that we have to go back to the formalization in course and see again lecture 1, lecture 5, formalization in course. And then, of course, we emphasize the policy area 2 lecture that comes next. Then once you finish with that, maybe when you listen to policy area 2, then you remember what we are talking about on involving community engagement, involving people, involving volunteers. And then we have lectures 3 and 5 and 3 and 4 of the formalization, and again policy area 6 that we need to focus on for this issue. Then we come with the other lectures, lecture 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, as I said. The lecture 2 that I said that I come again into that is how to engage communities, community engagement. This is very important. We have to work on that because in many areas we are not accustomed so much with engagement of people. People wait to be served and they don't take action. And here we want local action. And we want to know what does it mean, community engagement, and who is involved and what skills are needed. It is a blend of all scientists there. And what skills also the politicians need and what kind of training we need in order to achieve that. And I think we need to work more and more in this issue in future. And here I'll give you some example again, how we implement these two projects in parallel. Here we see the red box, how to prepare the strategy for formalization. And in parallel with the strategy of formalization, you're supposed to prepare the strategy for your local action plan for building back better. And here you have to prioritize the actions and works that you need. You need to prepare the specific cost-benefit analysis for the building back better. So you prepare also a cost-benefit analysis for the formalization and for building back better a separate cost-benefit analysis. And then, of course, you have to agree on a fit-for-purpose procedure also for the building back better in order to be pragmatic and in order to do something in time. And again, to prepare the strategy report for the local action plan, to prepare the communication plan and all that, and to get the approvals. And again, when you prepare the green box for formalization, the framework for formalization, again here, in parallel, you should define the pandemic risk in its of the various formalization zones, and to list all necessary measures and actions according to the priority that you identify in each zone, and then to define the legal and regulatory issues that may be necessary, and then to define the appropriate implementation actions, any administrative procedures, to identify the roles and responsibilities, who is going to do what, maybe to establish an emergency operations center in the municipality. And maybe you need also to define levels of penalties and the involved institutions if necessary. And then again, when we come to the yellow box, the orange box, the formalization of constructions, then again here, we are talking about the implementation of measures and actions, and actually the implementation of the small public works that we want to do for improvement, and to prepare the geospatial plans, to identify the routes, the buildings, for example, the spaces, how we will provide all that, the improvements of infrastructure, how we will serve the people, how we distribute food, and etc. So we have to have all these plans, and to implement and monitor. Monitoring is very important, and continually to assess the needs and continually to modify daily, and to keep the community engaged so that everybody will be trained in case of future emergency. And here when we are... here, when we come to the purple box, the actions in parallel and the following the formalization. Again, here we have long-term building back better actions that also maybe are in parallel with the long-term actual improvement of the ecosystem, again, for formalization and for minimizing the phenomenon of informal constructions in future. That includes, of course, the well-functioning property registration system, pro-growth planning, pro-poor planning, flexible permitting, general infrastructure upgrading works, planning for affordable housing, planning for having a property valuation system and a fair taxation system, planning for having a functioning and transparent real estate market, planning for funding mechanisms, professional education, professional standards and professional ethics, and an inclusive role of the private sector. And here are some take-home messages to emphasize the social value of the formalization and the recovery action plan, having in mind that when we have clear, fair, and affordable and transparent title issuing and registration, first we improve security of tenure against land grabbing and evictions and market pressure. This is important also during the pandemics. We cannot afford to throw people out of their houses, stop evictions and all that, give security of tenure. Then we improve living conditions when we provide titles. Then we create marketable and bankable property units. We minimize lending risks. We enable funding of all the improvements of the constructions, the neighborhood, etc. Then we provide the spatial data infrastructure for evidence-based good governance and provision of humanitarian support when needed. When we have the mapping, everything is easier, and we can prepare easier also the local action plan to meet disasters and pandemic risk reduction plans, etc. Second, we increase the public trust when we provide titles, and existing informal rights should be recognized and legalized prior to any land reform for upgrading or resettlement if needed or planning. Residents, when fairly treated, are more likely to support reforms. And this also improves the engagement, the community engagement. And we raise awareness also about community engagement and participation to support implementation of projects and local plans. And then, of course, we increase the pandemic resilience and tenure security against any kind of disaster and climate change. And the Sustainable Development Goals achievement for a more just, equitable, and sustainable future. And what is the way forward? We need continuously to monitor and exchange knowledge and share knowledge with each other through these kind of webinars and workshops, monitoring the progress of formalization, monitoring the land rights provision, the legislation, all kinds of identification of any bottlenecks and any new challenges, the implementation of the recovery action plans, how to improve security, how to improve all the parallel ecosystem, how to organize the sales market, the rental market, the fair taxation, fair, open and transparent valuation, the planning and the permitting, the affordable housing, how do we manage with community engagement, how do we get experience in preparing cost-benefit studies, how do we get experience on fundraising, how to prepare the local recovery action plans and the geospatial infrastructures that are needed, how do we build back better, etc. And for this, I have to inform you that we already started planning for a workshop to address all the progress and to monitor all the progress in 2025 in Athens. So I welcome you to start thinking about that and to start summarizing all your experience and come and present. Because as we know, we learn from yesterday, we live for today, and we hope for tomorrow. And the important thing is not to stop questioning. So thank you very much for joining today, this lecture and this webinar. And I'm available for any kind of clarifications and any kind of cooperation with you all.
Thank you very much, Chrissy. Some time for questions and answers. And I saw there are several of you who asked questions. So I think you should be able to see my screen with the interface of the courses that Chrissy was mentioning. So you can see that there are, apart from mandatory readings, because some of you were asking where you can access the studies. So one way to access them is through this course. When you register, you will have this screen available. And then, like Chrissy was mentioning, each interactive lecture has a test. And there are, in total, for each different course, there are 8 and 9 different chapters, each with a test. So you need to pass the test to unlock the next chapter. And upon completion of all the chapters, you will have a course certificate. And the same works for the course on COVID-19 Recovery Action Plan. So you have mandatory readings here with the COVID Recovery Action Plan, and you have a total of 9 different chapters that Chrissy was mentioning. And so also this courses are, like I mentioned before, are available in Russian as well. So you're very welcome to explore them. Question was from Mr. Hakimu Siviri, and the presentation, like I mentioned, will be shared. The recording will be shared after the webinar. The question from Ms. Siviri Sumehu, apologies for pronunciation. So this study, like I mentioned, is available either through e-learning course or through our website. You need to go to the publications section and you will find the link in the chat. We already published it. And okay, so more substantial question from Hakimu Siviri to one of our experts. So how can informal settlement residents be protected in a context where there are more interest in urban land that usually target dispossession of the urban poor? And if Anna or Chrissy, if you can comment on this question. And just to mention that there are 2 more questions and we have about 10 minutes left. So if you could be brief, and that would be very helpful. Thank you.
As I said, well, I understand that Mr. Hakimu means how can we protect them against evictions? And this is what I emphasized. That's why we prioritize the title offering, to empower them legally, so that to give them the ownership of the unit, of the property unit, of the land and the property unit. So this is why we put it number 1 there, and this is why also in the Sustainable Development Agenda we have Goal 1. And there, for the first time in the history, it is mentioned that access to ownership is really important in order to achieve, to get rid from extreme poverty, to ownership of land and resources and all that. It is the first time in history that all country members of UN have agreed to put this word there. And that's why we say that what is possible to be formalized, just go ahead and formalize and provide the ownership there for the people, so that it will be more difficult to remove them just like that, and especially during a pandemic or another crisis or another disaster. I don't say everything, I say whatever can be formalized. And this is the very important thing. When we start we start with a strategy to see what can be formalized and what cannot be formalized. And then to think what you will do with those that you cannot provide any title there, and you have to remove them, and you have to resettle them. And this is an issue. How big this, how large this number will be, where you will put these people. But just to keep them like that, it is not good.
Thank you, Chrissy. I hope this answers the question, Mr. Hakimov. And Anna, if you have any comments or additions, please feel free.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on these questions. As Chrissy mentioned in her presentation, what is very important is an involvement and engagement with communities, understanding their needs and their values. If you do it properly, so you will learn about what they value, whether they value their ownership title, or whether they prefer more alternative titling processes. This is key. So we cannot judge for communities. We need to involve them and understand their situation, their values, and their perspectives, and what they think what's good for them and their families.
Exactly. A community engagement is very important.
Yeah,
but sometimes even in Africa, people now have seen videos. Even in Africa, people say we do not need more blankets, and what we need is help us to have secure property titles for our land.
Yeah, that's why land title needs to come together with all a set of institutions. Just to address all those conditions and account for all those nuances of the process.
Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to the next question from Agran Becca. I think it was originally for Anna, but of course, both are welcome to. So what is the difference between constructions without permit and informal settlements? I'm thinking about the property title of the land where the houses are built. Thank you. So I don't know if Anna, you can clarify a little bit about this. I think here maybe the Agranbeka is talking about situation when a construction is built on a land which belongs to somebody else. So correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, if you can comment on this question. Thank you.
Of course, we have situation when you discover that some housing development is not properly done according to papers, no proper papers, construction documents, and permits. There are these cases, but our study was particularly focused on those cases of informal settlements in terms of that this phenomenon not only involves a lack of proper construction documentation, but also involves other issues to it, like poverty in some extreme cases, but also some unrealistic regulations or some changes like dynamics at the wider level, like urbanization and migration from rural areas to urban. So it's a more complex phenomenon rather than it goes much beyond just constructing a house without documentation, which is often happens with speculative development, and private developers can do this as well. But our focus was more on those phenomenon which goes beyond this, beyond these cases. Of course, it includes some elements of this, but it's more kind of social, economic, and political issue.
Thank you. Chrissy, do I want to add? something?
Yes, we address many situations there in the lectures for formalization. How do you deal when a property is built on the land that belongs to somebody else, and what is the experience from other countries, and what is the best practice? So you have to listen to these lectures, and if you still do not understand, then I'm available for any clarification, so that we will be brief now, not start explaining.
Yeah.
But there are good practices there, how you deal with that. Whether they purchase the land in a fair way or a cheap way or in the market price, depending on the situation, or you offer the land if it is state land or whatever. But there are good practices there in the lectures.
Thank you. And lastly, the question from Svetlana Dogataru. It is in Russian, so I'm going to translate it and into English. So Svetlana is wondering if you could give an example of solving the problems of legalization, formalizing the informal settlements which are not favelas. So, for example, some settlements that were formed as a result of different people who constructed their summer houses and their community of summer houses. So this kind of cases, they're frequent, and it is not exactly the self-construction, but there are many questions related to that, starting from inability to register property rights to land and buildings, and going to the lack of technical and social infrastructure to serve these communities. And these settlements are often in the suburbs of the capitals, and due to the lack of infrastructure such as schools, kindergartens, and other social facilities, the load on transport is increasing. And so if you could maybe provide some example with some positive outcome of formalizing this kind of settlements.
If I may, I would just like to clarify something. I think we should look at, we'll probably, if we go through these lectures that you pointed to, we'll probably find the examples, the case studies. I would like to say that these webinars are very useful. And I would like to say that we have informal settlements that have been in existence since 1992. You know, the people have been living there for decades, and some people have managed to obtain titles for their constructions, some not. But we have to scrutinize everything that you have provided to us and all the resources, and probably we will find the case studies and examples of good practices as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm not sure whether I understood well, but sometimes some buildings are constructed by the state for another purpose, not as a permanent housing. And if this is the purpose, then we do not formalize the title, but we can always improve the settlement, the situation, the transportation, the services, all what is needed according to the recovery action plans. And if by all means they have become actually first houses there, and if actually the state cannot undertake the upgrading and all that, of course we go for formalization of titles. It depends what, as I said, the strategy, when you make the strategy, what do you want? Do you want to keep it for the state, this small neighborhood, or not? Do you want to formalize? What can be formalized, go ahead and formalize as much as possible. But what cannot be formalized, if it is built on a highly protected area, in a sensitive area, or in a polluted area, for example, radioactive area, you cannot formalize. You have to decide what you can formalize and what you cannot. And the guidelines address this issue, and they give you information, a good practice on what are you doing when you decide to formalize. And if there are things that, of course, we are human beings, we have not in our mind everything, all the problems. Then if there is a problem, then ask for a question, and if we can make any specific answer and any specific contribution, then we are available. All co-authors are available. We have contacts with all co-authors, not only the two of us that are here, Anna and myself, but all the rest are available.
Regarding to Svetlana questions on this particular type of informality she mentioned, I think there are some movements in this direction, like, for example, dacha amnesty approach. So it would be good to explore those cases and to see what works and what doesn't work in formalizing those types of settlements or, dacha constructions or formations. It would be good to perhaps include in lectures and courses as well.
It is, Anna, maybe this is similar with the planning amnesty.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. I hope this answers a little bit some of the questions that we have looked at today. So the last question from Bogdan Kinea is, how can we legalize informal settlements and at the same time discourage this phenomenon? If precedents are created in the legalization of illegal constructions, these measures can lead to the encouragement of such behavior and to increase the number of illegal constructions with the objective of legalizing them. Where should be the line drawn between supporting people who really need support and people who want to take advantage of support mechanism? I think this is also mentioned in the course, but if our experts can comment on this, it would be very helpful.
To eliminate the phenomenon in future, how it is to improve the whole ecosystem, to provide incentives so that people will go the legal way, so to have to improve the private sector so that they will construct according to the need of the people, not only to make houses for the rich people, but also for the poor and middle class, affordable constructions, and to have affordable housing policy, and to have pro-growth and pro-poor planning, so that it will not be very expensive for the people to buy, to make it easier for the people to be legal, and to provide incentives for the people to be legal, to follow the legal way and not the extra legal, not to make it so complex, so difficult, so expensive for the people. And to improve the whole ecosystem, to improve the property registration, not to make it expensive also, to improve the banking sector so that people will be able to get a loan once they get the property title, and with low interest rate, and to be able to their livelihood and their health, their business, whatever. So it is an ongoing challenge how you will improve the culture so that people will go the legal way, will prefer the legal way. They have to understand that the legal way is better for them, and they have to understand that they are treated in a fair manner. So that's why we want to have the community engaged to support the formalization project, and to want to be formal and legal.
Yeah, I also think that one of the important things to do with informal settlements to ensure they are not coming up in future is to invest in proper analysis of the phenomenon, in proper understanding of all the factors involved in it. If you don't do that, so they will keep appearing. I think that's important to invest in it, which is It's not usually the case because of, various sorts of problems like lack of money, a rush in addressing,
This
this
is very, very
phenomenon.
correct. Very correct.
Yeah, because you need to do it quickly, and of course you don't want to invest in lengthy procedure of analysis, but it will cost you more money in the end. Yeah.
No, the analysis is important. This is what we mentioned when you plan the strategy. You have to analyze the reasons, the types, why is this phenomenon happening. You have to engage the local experts. They always know and they can help you to analyze and to see what is the big reason. Why is this happening? It is not easy.
I was saying it's very complex. It's not a problem to solve, but nevertheless, we hope that all the information that we shared today will be useful for you, and we would like to thank you for the participation, and just to mention that the next webinar will be also talking on this topic of informal settlements, and it will be more practical. So we'll bring some case studies from different cities and representatives of cities who did the formalization processes before, and they will share their experiences. So we hope you can join us for the next webinar. It's currently still pending date, but tentatively it's going to be end of February. And we will, of course, share this information about it on social media, and on the website. So please keep an eye on that. And finally, just I would like to ask you, after this meeting, there is a quick survey with the 6 questions, and we would really appreciate if you could answer these 6 questions for us to know if this webinar was useful for you. And so lastly, I would like to thank very much everyone, my colleagues, Alexander for interpreting this session into Russian, and our experts today. So thank you very much.